Good evening. I am Rafael Martinez, and this will end in darkness. Point 0.5 episode, audio only. Schedule's all weird this week. The schedule got jumbled. So we are going to do a 0.5 this week and get back to our normal schedule, hopefully, next week. To which I kind of hope to double up on episodes because I got some things coming up. But we'll see. We'll see. As of right now, here's a 0.5. I don't know how long this one will be. I don't, because I kind of want to talk about Epstein a little bit. Now, we've talked about him several times on the show. We've talked about, the details, the accusers, everything. But with the purchasing of his island, it's it's a story, but it's not a story. Because more has come out, but it seems as if people have a hard time grasping what it is all about. I was having a conversation with our executive producer, the Revolution, and he makes such a good point about it because I've been friends with him forever. So of course he's had to be subjected to so much of my conspiracy chit chat, my conspiracy interest, that he was telling me, he's like, it's really hard to get a hold on this story because so much of it feels like people are saying things, but they're not saying everything. And that's kind of the problem with the Epstein story in general. I think it's too esoteric. Yes, he had a pedophile island. Duh. But, Bill Gates was there. Bill Clinton was there. Who else was there? The CIA director recently came out, the past CIA director was meeting up with him because, quote unquote, to him, I was, going to the private sector and wanted his financial advice. Noam Chomsky was meeting with Epstein, apparently for several times, rode on the plane, conveniently forgot about riding on the plane, but then said if I was riding on the plane, it would be a flight to Boston or some shit like that. But everyone, when it comes to Epstein, will never get into the details of what their relation was with him and why. And what were they meeting up with him for? And that's what makes this case so utterly difficult to discuss in most cases. The documentaries come out. They do a good job with the accusers. The accusers are able to tell their side of the story. But then the accusers don't really say all that much about who was on the island because they're scared of death. People who were friends with Jeffrey, scared to death. Everyone's throwing it on Ghislaine. It's almost as if Epstein is this thread that if you pull it, it all unravels from there. Sorry for the popping noise. I'm using the handheld mic for this one. We're at the house. You might hear some birds chirping. So welcome to a Friday afternoon with Rafael Martinez. But this is what makes it so hard to discuss the case. That's so esoteric in nature. And to me, if it is a case where if you pull on one thread, it unravels everything, then what does that say about the power balance in which our country exists in, where one guy who seemingly had infinite contacts could do whatever he want knowingly? I mean, let's get into it. In 2008, he was convicted. He was a registered predator. Sex offender. He was a registered sex offender. Everywhere he went, he had to register with people and let them know, hey, he's moving in. But somehow knowing that, and my thing is this, you can't tell me these people in power did not do a Google search on the guy they were meeting. For the most basic meetings, people do a little quick Google search. People do a Google search on where they apply for a job. So it's a little fucking bizarre that no one did a Google search to go, hey, let's see if this guy's been involved in anything weird. Oh, he was? I probably shouldn't be taking a meeting with him. Or maybe he's reformed. Maybe that's what they thought. He's a reformed guy. He no longer fucks children. Everyone deserves a second chance, including a multi-millionaire pedophile with a weird island that had a temple. But he had a story that Bill Gates came to him for a chance at winning the Nobel Prize. What is it about this dude that you go, if I want to win a Nobel Prize, I gotta talk to Jeffrey. Now, there's no connection seemingly between him and the Nobel Prize people, but he was so confident that if he went to Jeffrey about it, Nobel Prize would be secured. That's not a little odd to anyone. But once again, because of the esoteric nature of this man's life, you can't really talk about any of this shit unless someone comes through with all the fucking documents. And considering he was a major fucking power broker, kingmaker, whatever, there's probably no documents. So now you have to, hope that somebody will come forward and go, here's how the whole operation worked. But who's going to be that guy? Because that dangling thread, once pulled, could unravel everything. It's kind of shocking. And it wasn't just, like I know right now the right really enjoys calling Democrats pedophiles and groomers, but there were right-wing guys hanging out with him too. So if he's operating with both sides of the aisle here, and he's just having a grand old time with these people on his island, how does one operate like this for so long? Then you get into the intelligence operative rumors that he was actually Mossad, that he was actually working as an intelligence agent, getting information out of these people to blackmail them and do what he wanted later, or do what the people who had interest in them wanted to do. So he was a kind of a spoiler, a honeypot, if you will. If that's the case, how is, now that he's dead, how is anyone not coming forward going, yeah, that's what he was doing? So this is the problem with the Epstein thing. It makes it so incredibly difficult to have a real conversation about, and it sucks because this is probably one of the bigger news stories in the 21st century and in American history. And we're never going to have closure on it. Never. Honestly, I feel like if it took the devil's chessboard to reveal everything about Alan Dulles, and that was as far as the 60s, right? Well, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s, that's 50 years, essentially. Is it going to take another 50 years before we have closure on this story? And by then, it will be 50 years from, now, and people won't even give a shit because they'll have moved on to another thing. The next Jeffrey Epstein will be rocking around because these guys do get replaced. I'm a firm believer in that. These dudes do get replaced. I think that's why he was able to be convicted. I think whatever quote unquote powers that be, well, he's no longer useful to us. So let it happen. Let him take him. R. Kelly, me and my friend were having a great conversation about this the other day. The Revolution. We were talking about R. Kelly. And he was saying how it's like Jeffrey Epstein. Because if you consider that R. Kelly was no longer valuable to people by time he got caught. He wasn't selling the records he used to sell. He just wasn't that guy anymore. So it made every, perfect sense to go, hey, now's the time to fuck this dude up. Now's the time to put him in jail. Now's the time to come after him with all the stuff we got. And it makes sense. Not saying that it's a vast conspiracy to take down R. Kelly. Because to be fair, he did what he did. But it was an open secret. And no one said shit until they no longer made money off him. The platinum records were going down. He wasn't generating the revenue he used to generate. Maybe it's the same case with Jeffrey. He wasn't generating the revenue anymore. The people who were protecting him weren't interested in it anymore. But what comes with that is we're never going to know what happened because he killed himself. And Ghislaine's made a deal of some kind. And all those would be swept under the rug. And those who had to be punished will be punished. And whatever had to get wiped away will be wiped away. And that'll be it. And now someone owns the island, and they will turn it into a beach resort, I believe. A 25-room beach resort. So, once again, the elites will be able to go there, but they won't have access to pedophilia anymore. Which will hurt some of their client base, I think. I think some people will not be happy to go to Pedophile Island, only to find there are no children to be pedophiles with. So he better make it up front. Make sure up front in advertisements, there will be no pedophilia here. Little St. James is different now. This is a brand new establishment under new management. And that, to me, is just kind of how life goes. You know, the farther you get away from history, the more it matters less and less. And the things that are deeply rooted in history that still affect us to this day almost get looked at as trivial facts, trivial moments, to be, moved on from, to be forgotten about, even though they still are seemingly relevant today. There's a reason why money in politics is so fucking weird. And who these rich millionaires and billionaires are who operate outside the law and give money to your favorite politicians and nothing gets said about them. We talk about the Franklin scandal on here, which is the episode that might have gotten our last producer nixed. But we talk about the Franklin scandal, the Franklin Credit Union scandal. He was a guy who was operating the Franklin Credit Union, and he was also a big Republican donor, and he was flying children to different Republican politicians, pedophiling. He got taken down eventually as well. Who replaces him? Jeffrey Epstein. Like, these guys don't go away. Evil never dies. It just takes a different shape, a different form. So that's what I constantly wonder about. Who will be the next guy stepping up? And when you say shit like this to people, they think you're a conspiracy nut. But when you just present them the history of it, it's almost too much for them to bear. I legitimately think the reason why this stuff doesn't get talked about is because there's no way the world can be this evil to some people. There's no way that this kind of evilness can exist. But as I've coming to learn, there at a certain level, there is no morality, just interest. And that is a frightening thing to be aware of now. Frightening thing to be aware of. Because then you start asking the question of, is it all been interest at the beginning? Have we never done things because they were the right thing to do? We did it because they were of interest to people in power, people with money. So they said, fuck it, let's do it. Like, you look at civil rights, right? Civil rights is an honorable thing, a beautiful thing. We had a hell of a movement here. We shouldn't have had to have one in the first place. Or you consider the Constitution says all men are created equal, but that's a debate for a different day. But we had it. But then you start to ask the question, well, was that movement allowed to succeed because the people who were in power went, you know what, it would be in our best interest to give them the right to vote and to make things equal and to do things like affirmative action? Like, was there a power play there to be made? And that's the frightening part, to think about. You think about the war in Iraq and all that. 9/11 had just barely happened. We had just barely gotten to Afghanistan. Now it's like, hey, we're going to Iraq. Well, it has something to do with 9/11? No. But we should. Evil's out there. We got to go stop them. It was oil interest. Halliburton interest. When you start to become more and more aware that there is no morality, only interest, you now have to start looking at the people you support and look at them and going, they really kind of don't give a shit. I don't think Joe Biden gives a shit. I think there are interests that he has, that he's aligned with, that suit him. Same thing with Donald Trump. I don't think he's a good guy. Don't think he's a bad guy. He's a man of interest. Whatever suits him in the moment, that's where he is. That's what politicians are. This is the system is built on. The founding fathers, I don't think, were doing it for moral reasons. That's something I'm hoping we can get more into this summer. I kind of want to talk about the American Revolution over a span of a few weeks. Like these little half-hour lessons I want to do. We'll see what that happens. He's the beautiful about the point 5 episode. We really go behind the scenes on the point 5. But to me, that was an interest. They no longer wanted to pay taxes to a king. So they said, fuck it, we'll start our own country. Why pay him? Why can't people pay us? We'll start our own country. That's kind of the essentialness of interest, really. The base of interest. And it's a shame, but at the same time, at least for me, looking at things through a optimistic nihilist perspective, it's kind of relaxing. It's kind of comforting, knowing that inevitably there is no morality. Morality is a very subjective thing for the individual. What I view good as is not someone else's good, and vice versa with evil. Now, when you tell people, that's a very frightening concept, because to them, they live by a hardcore set of laws. Like, well, there inevitably has to be good. Objectively, there has to be good. But does the universe take sides? I don't think so. As we said, last week, the universe could die. Our galaxy could die, and the universe wouldn't even feel it. So is it good or bad? It's all about interest. Interest of the group. Your own existence, your own survival. That's the game these guys are playing when they're in these power circles. Millions of dollars are being spent. Millions of votes are at stake. Like, it's insanity. And I do think there's a level that you can get to being too rich where your mind just breaks. And that's why I don't think it's Illuminati. I don't think it's a ring. A child ring. I just think when you get to a certain amount of money where you realize there's nothing you'll ever have to worry about. You are free to do as you please with all the money you have. Laws are meaningless to you. There are no lines. You cut right through them. You have a mental break because no one stops you anymore. So you become more of this lizard brain, beastly glutton. And you're just able to do as you please. And you don't care if it's at the risk of other people. Or you don't care if it's traumatizing to other people. Or you're using people and you abuse them and you toss them away. Like if you look at the fucking show Succession, the way Logan Roy treated people. He had reached a place where he had enough money where he can just do that shit. Now, do I think there was an internal thing for Logan Roy? He's a TV character, of course. Do I think there's an internal logic of trying to make his children tough? Maybe. But the way he treats people outside of it is just dismissive. Throws people away. The only thing he really values is having the masses and being able to articulate his beliefs to the masses and they spit it back at him. And that's really where we're at. Like if you look at all these people who are tied to Epstein, these were people who wanted to maintain a level of influence in their circles amongst the populace, and he had the means of getting it done, whether it was connecting them to other people, providing them with money. Like you don't spend time with a guy like that not looking to preserve yourself. And is dealing with Jeffrey Epstein like dealing with the devil? More than likely, yeah. Probably 100% accurately, really. And I think that's another aspect of it. Epstein is such a character that he almost becomes more than human. He just becomes the embodiment of evil. The embodiment of demonic fucking presence. And I think for that's hard for people to comprehend. It's fucking scary as shit. But these people exist. And what's wild is, there's probably a universe where we never find out about this guy. Because most guys like him don't get found out. But, you have a guy like Alex Jones. God bless him. Old Alex Jones, at least. who goes, hey, there's this guy out there. He's got an island. Clinton's been on there. He's got a painting of Clinton in a dress, you know? So the conspiracy nuts tell you first. Then the mainstream news tells you afterwards, which seems to be the case a lot of the times, I feel. Not with every conspiracy, but for some things. The conspiracy nuts are always there first, but then they go Looney Tunes with it. And then once more evidence comes out, then the mainstream media picks it up and now it's a story. Because now they have more to go on. Instead of going, hey, there's this weird thing going on. We should investigate it, but not too hard though. Because our friends who are benefiting off this guy are not done with him yet. But I think that really is what it is. He's more than a person. He is an embodiment of America's utter fascination with darkness. Like, who really wants to know what happened on that island? Like guys like me want to, because we want to know the truth. You know, and I'm not saying I'm better than anybody else. I'm just saying, like, I have a fascination with, I need to know what's behind the curtain. Some people don't want to know that. Some people just, honestly, some people just want to pay the rent, get their groceries. So in their mind, it's hard for them to connect. What does that have to do with Epstein and vice versa? So it's hard to get them to care about these things because it's not affecting their bottom line. You know, it's not affecting their everyday lives. But in essence, this guy was talking to people who were affecting your everyday life. And if that doesn't tell you about the character of these people who are affecting your everyday life, you know? But that's kind of the beauty of it. That's kind of the real beauty of a story like this. Because if you are someone who's tied to him, you kind of don't have to worry. Because they're never going to come after you. The next thing will happen. You know, Ron DeSantis will do something stupid, and then we'll all move on to that. Trump will say something dumb, we'll all move on to that. Biden will forget where he is again, and we'll all move on to that. It's kind of beautiful. You know, if anything, I don't think Jeffrey should have killed himself, to be honest with you. I don't know what he was worried about. Yeah, he would have gone to jail, but I guarantee you he still would have been able to run his empire from in jail. That's how it happens for guys like that. You know, I think, listen, I will admit I am on the camp of I don't think Epstein killed himself. All full disclosure, I don't think he did. So, operating from that premise, those who did want him gone, I think overestimated society's understanding of what was actually going on. And I think that's something a lot of elites do. I think because they are highly aware of what's really going on or the quote unquote truth and how these systems work. They almost rat themselves out by going to these hyper lengths of protecting their interest. So a place where Epstein's death wasn't, you know, if Epstein didn't kill himself, I don't think you get the documentaries. I think because there was question of whether he killed himself or not is what made those documentaries even interesting to make or valuable to make. I guarantee you he would have just been another guy. A rich guy committed a crime. He probably would have had at least one Netflix documentary, but no one would have touched it. Like, no one would have really gone forward with the story, and we still wouldn't be talking about it. You know? He probably would have had to plead guilty anyway. And he probably would have got a short sentence. He probably would have spent some time in jail, and then he would have been right back at it. There are politicians who've gotten caught with prostitutes that are right back at it. There are guys who were in car crashes where someone died, but they're right back at it because memory and a sense of history is no longer valued because everyone is struggling. And that's kind of the beauty of the system that the government's running now. You're all poor. You're all broke. So you kind of don't care about all the other shit that's happening. You just care about the bottom line. And now, because we care about the bottom line, you kind of understand what we're doing. We're struggling to maintain our wealth. You know, like that's how the elites look at it. Like, I think one of my favorite things Conor Roy told cousin Gray, I think like he was gonna get like $5 million or something from his inheritance. And Connor was like, "Oh, that's not rich. That's poor. That's like being the poorest rich person." And so for them, the idea of having more money in the bank is their version of us barely scraping by, because they're not able to live at the heights they would like to live. And we are barely scraping by. So they've now figured out how to make their issues our issues, but in a way where they can do their dirty work, and we're just struggling. So we pay no mind to what's happening behind the curtain. Nor do we care, because fuck the curtain, fuck everything else. The day-to-day life of the average citizen is rough. And I think that's the problem with the Epstein story. It just doesn't have that component. And you would think, because, hey, it involves children, that would be the component that does it. Still didn't. Still fucking didn't. And it's fascinating to me. Like, it's unfortunate, because I do think it's a story worth pursuing, but I just don't think it'll be really pursued. I think it will fall to the wayside, and it'll be something that gets written off like, that's still happening? That's still going on? People are still talking about that? And it'll be unfortunate. I do think it's a important story. I do think it's something worth investigating. Sorry. Got a lot of burps coming up. A lot of hiccups. But yeah. You know, and here's the thing, though. Do we really want to know? Like, do we really want to know? Because listen, even with the shit I know about American government and how it operates in the shadows and all that, that can be really depressing. Like, sometimes I walk down the street and I look around and I'm like, this is all so fragile. It could be gone tomorrow. Just gone. Because one dude made one decision somewhere who I don't even know. And he can alter my life forever. You know, it's hard to do dance. It's hard to do a battle with the devil when you have no weaponry. And you're kind of just at the mercy of it. Like, we're at the mercy of these little demons that are just looking down going, fuck you, fuck you, fuck you, like throwing shit at us all the time. And that's the horror. And there is no one in control. There is no big boss. You know, when I was a kid, I thought the president was the big boss. I thought the biggest thing you could be was president. Now I realize, nah. One, he doesn't make enough money to be the big boss. And two, he's a lackey to interests like everyone else. So in a world with such clear lawlessness and a lack of morality and only interest, you kind of don't want to know. You kind of want to live in a level of ignorance. You want to be able to binge your TV shows. You want to be able to play your video games. You want to be able to hang out with your friends, watch dumb movies. You want to be able to go back to just having a normal fucking life. That's a little hard for me. Like, it kind of is. Like, that's something I do struggle with. Like, I do struggle with having small talk. Because to me, like, small talk's so irrelevant now. Because everything just feels so gigantic. And small talk to me just feels like I'm putting a mask on, or I'm putting earmuffs on, or I'm putting sunglasses on to the world. You know, it's hard really to engage in those things again. And to be fair, it's something I'm going to have to do. Like, you cannot live your entire life thinking about this shit. You can't. And it's where a lot of my humor comes from. And people, talk about, how I'm irreverent, and how, like, yo, you just go there. I'm like, yeah, because there's no fearlessness. There's no governor in charge. There's no one in charge. What is the worst that could happen from me doing my podcast? Certain groups don't talk to me. I'm unhireable in certain places. I'll find a place. Believe me, I'll find a place. We all find our place in this world. But it's like, how can there be a level of fear when there is no governor? As long as you don't break the law, do what you want. Because there is no guy looking out for you. What are your interests? What are you invested in? Who are you invested in? That's where I got into my place at, where it's like, well, I tell a friend all the time who's constantly scared about the future. I tell him, hey, all you can do is right by you and yours. You can't do anything more than that. Can't. So what are you worried about? What are you freaking out about? You can't control anything else. You can control how you treat people you love. You can control who you're there for, what you can do for them in your own situation. That's it. That's it. I saw the movie Beau is Afraid, and the first 20 minutes are like some of my favorite 20 minutes in a movie ever. He lives like in a hyper-lies New York where it's just madness outside his door. And it's such an accurate way. There's construction going on outside. But it's such an accurate depiction of what it feels like to be in New York. It's Ari Aster at his best, in my opinion. Though I understand why people don't like the movie, because the other 2/3 of it's a bit rough. But there is nothing but madness out there, and we have this unspoken agreement that when we walk at the door, no one's gonna hurt us, and we're not gonna hurt other people. It's an unspoken agreement. It's an agreement that's held up until it's not, So to me, things now feel like there are no firm footing. There are no firm truths or firm, rules. And that's horrifying. But at the same time, a bit freeing. And it's why a guy like Jeffrey Epstein, that kind of evil is just never, it's never going to be dealt with. Because if you pull that string, it only reaffirms that there are no hardcore truths. And that money can buy you everything, and influence can buy you everything. And people just live how they want and do what they want. And I think the pandemic, sitting at home, and people just watching all of it play out, and you get Tiger King, you get the Epstein stories, you get the riots and all that. Everyone realized, holy shit, there is no one in charge. Nobody knows what they're doing. And I've put my faith in the system, thinking people knew what they were doing. What a mind fuck. What a mind fuck. But I guess the optimistic nihilist in me goes, well, if no one's in charge, well, have fun. Have fun. Because who are you reporting to? Who's there to report to? I think that's why people kind of look back at high school and college and all that and lament it, because they wish they can go back, because at least there were rules there. You knew what you had to do to get a good grade, what it is to be in a social network. There was things to return to every day. There was a format, and the rules were solid. Workplaces aren't necessarily like that anymore. Everyone's trying to get over. Everyone's a carny. Even at work, there are no hardcore truths anymore. But in schools, there were. Which, oddly enough, apparently is a Prussian concept. The school system we have now. Which I haven't fully investigated this theory. I just heard it in conversation that was just thrown out there. I didn't Google it, but it's kind of a system that was programming people to live and die for the state, which then became something that the Nazis used, and that's why our education system the way it is now, because we have to build. The idea was to build more patriotic and not integrated, but like indoctrinated people into the system of what America is, what it represents, what your role in America is. So hence we have a system now. And if you spend all your time in that system, you're told don't look at certain things. You're told, here's the American myth. This is how the myth operates. Believe anything outside of it, you're a fucking heathen. You're a traitor. You're un-American. But then you get to the 2000s, everyone's kind of un-American because we all kind of see what's going on. We all kind of see the horse shit. And now, you're just facing reality straight up. That the system was a lie. All of it was a lie. So now, you just make your peace with the lie. And as far as I'm concerned, find your level of criminality you're comfortable with. Just find your level of criminality. Pull off a scheme. Start a pyramid scheme. Start a cult. Do what you want. Do what you want. Do what you want. I don't have a song for that, but I will write one. But yeah, that's all I've been thinking about. This Epstein thing. It's too esoteric, man. And like even with this like 0.5 episode, like what have I really said about him that all we can do is insinuate, because there's no fucking hardcore truths. I'll tell you what I believe. I believe he was fucking, blackmailing these people. I believe some of these people were engaging in fucking around with young women. Not gonna come out though, because if you do, then you gotta go after everyone. And if you go after everyone, well, power vacuum. You know what happens in power vacuums? Tyrants. And that's kind of what I think it is. I think you have to allow for a level of criminality to keep the power vacuum at bay. Because once there is a power vacuum, it gets a lot worse. So I guess the moral of the story is, it could always be worse. But then again, I think we all know how this one is going to end.